All right, today we're going to talk about waveguides. What are waveguides and why do we use them? What does it matter? One thing I get asked fairly regularly is, well, what is a waveguide and why do we use them? That's really what we're going to talk about today. Now, whenever you have a point source in space and you're emitting electromagnetic radiation, and this being the distinctive here, so we're talking about waveguides in the context of electromagnetic propagation of waves. So if you have a point source and you have an emission from that and it propagates out into space, you're going to have a spherical wave. It's going to be moving out spherically for consistent space. Now, as that propagates through space, you're going to have losses as the energy gets more and more spread out. And there are absorption of different frequencies with certain things. We're not going to worry about that right now. But just for the general consideration of space, the intensity of the energy that's being put out falls off as 1 over the square of the distance as it moves away from that point source. As we're looking at a representation here, looking at some unitless value for distance, then twice that distance and 3 times that distance, and it rolls off as 1 over the square of the distance. That's what we call the inverse square. That's a loss of an inverse square, 1 over the square of the distance. Now, that's undesirable, especially when we want to capture energy and we want to send it in a very specific direction. Right here, we're talking about dealing with energy propagating in 3 space, propagating in 3 dimensions. But take the example where we have an antenna and we have high energy, a large amount of electromagnetic radiation that we want to send down that line. Well, how do we do that? Well, the answer is we use a waveguide. A waveguide is essentially a way of constraining electromagnetic energy and taking that and causing it to propagate, but only in 1 dimension. Okay. Hi.
So you may think it's an easy journey, right? Inside your body, where it's very difficult to balance with the circuit that tries to sign out, like eating your reason arteries, blocking your way from eternity. So that's why the ancient Egyptians have created what we call the perfect text. These are magical inscriptions that allow the deceased to...
For example, this is a waveguide feed network that feeds multiple ports of an antenna system. It's got a little rectangular port here, and it goes out to all these other rectangular ports. And what it's doing is it's causing the radiation, keeping it inside of here, and causing it only to propagate along the single dimensional line of action that it cares about. Now, when it comes to waveguides, electromagnetic radiation propagating waveguides, there can be a couple of major types that get talked about. Circular, and rectangular. Now, for the most part, we're going to be encountering and dealing with rectangular waveguides. Now, that is something where it's going to, rather than have the energy propagating and spreading out in 3 space, it's going to take that energy and really cause it to bounce off the walls and move down line. And ideally, and again, we don't live in an ideal world, we are dealing with radiation that's essentially lossless once it is in that waveguide. So
we're going to go inside the red pyramid.
Oh, I'll be glad to.
Yeah. Thank you. At this point, I'm going to have to turn on a light because this is a maintenance shaft. This is not a walkway. A lot deeper than I thought it would be. Again, going into something which covers several acres. This isn't the greatest of the Great Pyramids, but this is a damn big pyramid, I'll tell you that much. Okay, this is at the bottom of the shaft entrance into the Red Pyramid. Hundreds of feet that we came down at an angle. Again, you see 3 feet by 3 feet is the basic dimension. Oh! Now we turn and enter the core of the Red Pyramid in Egypt. Mark has a torch, so this is how you can see almost the baffling that's in the interior of the Red Pyramid. Definitely for resonance or acoustics, wouldn't you say, Mark?
Absolutely.
Not as a tomb, because these have a pragmatic function, clearly. Okay, the opening's about 6 feet high, so it's a relief compared to the 3-foot main shaft entrance. Whoa. Same thing, you have these baffle-like projections going up, but this room's oriented 90 degrees compared to the other one. So it's the sonic effect in here, reverberation, etc., which is amazing. If you hit the right tone, then the whole room vibrates. And again, that lends credence to the idea that this was not the tomb of a dead king, but that this had a very pragmatic function, and that was a vibrational function. One thing that Yusuf Awiyan just pointed out, who is our oral tradition expert and guide, is that this is the original. The color is going to be crap in this video, but it's the best I can do. You see the white, that's the original limestone color. And then the exterior surface now is a yellowish, reddish, brownish color. It's staining from something, but the question is stained from what? Not simply time. It's as if there was some kind of liquid or chemical that was inside of this pyramid that stained the stone. Airborne? Or was it part of the function? This will give you a much better idea here because there's an actual light. But the color here, you can see where it looks like it's been, well, you can see where it's been dripping down. But again, the acoustics are just phenomenal in the Red Pyramid in Egypt. So people are toning away in here because this thing has astonishing resonance properties. Again, adding credence to the idea that it was a pragmatic building when it was constructed and not a tomb. And the precision you can see here. This groove, you see, isn't really a good example of the precision of the fit of the work because it's channeled in left and right like that. So you've got like this this V shape going in. So it's not a good example, but as we come down to where the stone's been broken, here, look at that. I don't even know if you can see that, but that is a join between two stones, and it's so close together, you can't fit anything in there. I don't even know if water could seep into that. That's out of this world.
So we can be talking about a couple of different things as far as how that's propagating. Generally, when we're talking about a wave moving through space, we can have an electric field, we can have a magnetic field, and those being orthogonal to each other. Now, the same in a waveguide. We can have, down the direction of propagation, we can have the electric field, represented here in purple, being transverse electric field, transverse to the direction of propagation.
Field everywhere inside the waveguide and for all time either points straight up or straight down. They are straight lines that span the height of the waveguide. For clarity, the electric field lines are drawn only partway across the waveguide. The colors indicate the magnitude of the electric field, with yellow represent the peak electric field. Notice that initially the electric field is directed in the positive Y direction, but then switches up. Next, we see the magnetic field lines. Once again, colors give an indication of the magnitude of the magnetic field. Green represents the peak value. Notice that the magnetic field lines, as is usually the case for textbook problems, form closed loops. Magnetic field lines are plotted at the midplane, a third of the way up, and a third of the way down. Magnetic field lines have the same shape and the same color. Although the field lines switch directions from loop to loop. Magnetic field lines have no dependence on Y, and each loop lies in a plane. And likewise, for the magnetic field lines, we see two sets of loops spanning the width of the waveguide. And once again, colors give an indication of the magnitude of the magnetic field. And we see here the charge density plotted, and as with the TE10 mode, no charge appears on the sides of the conductor.
Is whenever you're using waveguides, you're going to experience losses differently than you will in coaxial systems. Waveguides very often get used for much higher frequency systems. And also another thing to remember is this: the lower the frequency, the larger your waveguide's going to be. So if you end up on the order of 80 gigahertz, you're going to be talking about single-digit millimeters for the waveguide cross-section. If you're somewhere around X-band, you're going to be more around that inch by 3/8 of an inch size rectangular. Just to give you an idea.
I'll be going to explain parallel plate waveguide, and this is my presentation outlines, where first I'll begin this session with basic structure of parallel plate waveguide, and then I'll explain transverse electric, transverse magnetic and transverse electric magnetic mode functioning in parallel plate waveguide. Then we'll see how cutoff frequency which is there in parallel plate waveguide, and then we will calculate how we can have tilt angle in parallel plate waveguide, and then we'll see intrinsic wave impedance which is there in parallel plate waveguide, and then at the end I will summing up this session with phase velocity and group velocity in parallel plate waveguide. So when we see the basic structure which is there with parallel plate waveguide, so that basic structure is like this, where two parallel plates are there. So one can say these are two parallel plates, which is what the basic structure which is there with two parallel plate waveguide, where there could be dielectric material which is what we are separating with this two plate. So in between that there could be air or dielectric material.
which is considered sacred by locals. And if you visit this place, there are two reasons you feel really weird about this. One is the thousands of bats which are tightly packed in.
Один из самых часто задаваемых вопросов – это вопрос об отражении волны от открытого конца волновода. Почему это происходит и как это вообще возможно, отражение от открытого конца? И как это отражение минимизировать? Для того, чтобы ответить на эти вопросы, прежде всего необходимо понять, что волновод – это антенна бегущей волны. Электрическое поле, распространяющееся в волноводе, существует не само по себе, а между верхней и нижней стенками волновода. По этим стенкам протекают высокочастотные токи, точно так же, как они протекают в полотне любой другой антенны бегущей волны, например, V-образной антенны. Но если в V-образной антенне ток в полотне постепенно переходит в электрическое поле между отрезками этой антенны, то в случае волновода этого не происходит. Высокочастотный ток на верхней и нижней стенках
this is not a natural cave. So, did ancient builders create some kind of ultrasonic device which is still hidden behind the wall? And if so, this yoni is also considered a wormhole which can be activated using sound. Some people even claim that this is some kind of a sonic boom tunnel.